Alright, I'm back. The iPhone in Unreal Engine 5. I'm going to go over how I made this animation, show you the lighting scenarios, how I imported the product, how to get all your shots together, and a few other tips. Let's just jump straight in. Okay, so I'm in Cinema 4D with my model. By the way, I got this model for free on Sketchfab. You can do the same. I'll add a link below to where I got mine from. It's not perfect, but if you remesh a bunch of stuff, it ends up working quite well, and I remodeled a few bits, but overall it's really good for just like a personal project. So typically I would advise using the Datasmith or Cineware workflow. However, with a bit of trial and error, I found that using the FBX workflow worked quite well for me. So what I would do now is very simple. You have your model ready, all split up and organized into the correct groups, and then you just go File, Export, FBX, and just leave all the settings on default. Now when you are in Unreal, you just want to go, maybe probably make a folder first. So I'll make a new folder, FBX _ iPhone, and then go File, Import into Level. Find your file and then select the folder you want. So I'll do FBX _ iPhone, hit OK, and now you'll be greeted with this dialog box. I typically like to just uncheck the root node. I will make sure the hierarchy type is one blueprint asset. So this is one of the main reasons I do this workflow, is because it puts it all into one blueprint for you automatically, and you can just work with one single object. Make sure all your static meshes are checked. Skeletal meshes we don't need to worry about, and I don't have any materials assigned because I'm going to be doing all of that in Unreal anyways. So yeah, pretty much everything is on default, I think. If not, you can probably just copy what I've done here, and then you just go import and it'll start importing your model. You can just ignore these warnings, and now you'll have this FBX scene _ FBX _ iPhone 2 blah blah blah. I'm gonna rename it to BP for blueprint BP _ iPhone, and delete that one, drag this new one in, and we're pretty much good to go. I think there's a bug, yes. So for some reason, there's this weird bug where like I'm moving an actor, but it's not the parent of the iPhone. All you got to do is just hit edit the blueprint. Let me drag it over. And it's still brought in this default scene root, even though I unchecked it. I don't know if it's a 5.1 bug, but all you got to do is grab your parent null, drag it on top, deletes that one, hit compile, save, exit out, and now your pivot point is where it was in your modeling software, and you can now manipulate this however you want. So that's how you fix that bug, and now everything's imported. So now you might be wondering, how am I supposed to do materials, because it's all one object? You could double click on this and then change the materials, but that's definitely not what you want to do, because by doing that, it only changes this instance of the object. So if you drag a new one in, you're going to have to do the materials again. What you want to do is go to edit BP iPhone here, or you can just double click this. It'll open up. Go to viewport, click on something and then press F to zoom in on it. And now what you can do is select each object and apply your materials to it. And if you name things correctly, this is where naming gets really important. For example, lens black, I've labeled a bunch of stuff, and then you can just click all of them, search for a material and apply it, lens black, boom. And that's all you got to do for that. And then you can go to the underside. I think my parent null was rotated incorrectly in Cinema, so make sure your null is the correct rotation. And then yeah, you can just click your next object, type in screen or whatever. Now you've got that. And then I've got another screen material that's off. And click your frame, and then you type stainless, I think I've called it. Yeah. So very simple, you just got to do it once and then you never have to do it again. So just set up your materials. And if you're wondering about the material setups, they're very simple. Go watch my beginner beginner UE5 material video or whatever it's called, I just pretty much use a base instance and then a base master material and then instance those out. So for example, my purple frosted back, which isn't physically correct, but it kind of gives that look where you just have a color overlay. I've got a normal map and that's it. And then for the stainless steel, if I double click it, you can open it up and I've just got a color, no maps involved, and then just roughness set to whatever I want. And by the way, once you set your materials up in here, you can then access them in your viewport just by double clicking. So you can just double click and then they'll show up here. And then I think if you just double click once, you go inside the parent and then you can just click different objects as normal. And if you see me switching between modes here, I'm switching between lit and unlit, and I'm just using the shortcut Alt 3 and Alt 4, just because I got no lights in my scene currently. So yeah, that's how you set up your model. Okay, so now let's just jump into the fun stuff, which is the animation. So I've got a sequencer folder here, and I've got a master animation, which is just a regular level sequence, you know, like one of these guys, cinematics level sequence. Open it up. Oh, there we go, it's already open. So, sorry, let me do that again. Open it up, and within my master sequence, I have a bunch of sub-sequences within it where I've laid out all my shots. So this is a really great advantage. Sorry, didn't mean to bump my mic. This is a really big advantage of the sequencer in Unreal. You can start storyboarding and actually cutting your tracks to length within sequencer itself, so you don't have to worry about rendering unused frames. And you can even drag like audio clips into this and sync it up nicely, so that way you minimize post-production work. So let me kind of explain what's going on here. What I'll do is I'll open up a fresh sequence. I can even do one now. Cinematics level sequence, shot 08, blank sequence. First thing I'll do is add a camera, call it cam 1, or I'll actually cam 01. And you'll notice it has this lightning bolt, and if you hover over it, this item is spawned by sequencer according to this object spawn track. Essentially what that means is you've made this item or object spawnable. And you can see here in your outliner that this cam is referenced in shot 8. The advantage to this is now if I close this, I don't have that in my outliner anymore, which is great. So now all my relevant objects are in this one sequence. So now what I'll do is I'll grab my iPhone, make sure it's on 0, boom, go back to my sequence, drag my iPhone in, and I can make this spawnable as well. So right click, convert to spawnable. And if I save this and close it, you'll see now my camera and my iPhone all live within this one sequence. So it helps really keeping your scene very clean and organized without having to worry about reusing or jumbling up different lights or phone models that you're using, and you don't have to create a million copies of one thing. So really good for this type of animation where it's all previs and you're not, you know, sending this off to a production film studio where you need to bake lights and all that stuff. So if I go back now to my actual sequence, you'll notice that these two phones are spawnable, so they just popped in, and I have a bunch of lights that are also spawnable. So these lights are unique to this shot. So if I go to here, press Alt 4 to go to lit mode, and I'll go to the end. All these lights are unique to this file. So if I close this, no more lights. So really useful for staying organized, as well as having specific lighting setups in one level or scene in your Unreal file. So I'll jump back in. Let me actually give an overview of what I've done here. Also, another tip, if you have a camera cut track, but it's not like you don't have any camera text showing up here, all you got to do is, if I delete this and delete this, just go to track, camera cut track, camera, new binding, cam shot 01, which is this guy here. So I can go to it here, but you definitely want it in the camera cut. Otherwise it won't show up in your master sequence. So make sure you have a camera as well as a camera cut track. So new binding, cam 01, and make sure it spans your entire timeline within your in and out points. So the good thing with this is, say you have this camera and then you duplicate it. I just hit Control D there to duplicate, and you'll see this is highlighted. That means it's telling me which camera I'm in. And then I'll just rename it Cam Shot 01B. I'll drag it underneath to stay organized. Let me change the angle or the position. So I'll go here, maybe move it up to this close. Let me grab my grid, move it here, set a keyframe, move it to the end. I gotta redo this keyframe. Maybe it's something there, and boom. You can also have this auto keyframe turned on. So I was clicking it here. I actually didn't have to, but say I want my camera to be here. Now I'll need to click add a new key. But if I have this turned on, and I want my camera to be here, it'll auto make a new keyframe. So make sure you're very wary of this because you don't want to overwrite keyframes. So if you're very comfortable in this sort of auto keyframe environment, then I recommend using it because it can really speed up your workflow and you don't need to click this every time. Anyway, so let me delete this. This is my camera movement. I think by default, your settings will have the keyframes come in as cubic, which is easy ease in and out. I set my default to linear, and you can do that in your project or editor preferences. Or what you can do is if you select both keyframes and you hit 1, that makes it ease in and ease out. And if you hit 4, that makes it linear keyframe. So just a quick shortcut. So you can just select, make this ease, select this, make this ease or linear, select both and do it to all of them rather than right clicking and clicking your selection every time. Okay, so back to my actual point. Sorry for the tangent. I have this shot, which I like. And then let's say I also want my cam shot 01 in this as well. So new binding, cam shot 01. And now if I hit my camera cut track, I'm gonna have my camera movement of 01, and then it'll cut to the 01B for the next one. So now you can just time it. Maybe you want your first shot to be a bit longer, so you drag that out, boom. And now this all lives in shot 1. So this is a typical workflow I would do for a camera shot. Sorry, the sun went down, so I've just put my light back on. The next part of this sequence that I want to show you is just what the lights are doing. So if I just go into my multi-view here and make sure you're out of your camera cut track if you're doing multi-view, because it takes what do you call it? It overrides both views. So I'm just going to click in this one and then go into my actual camera. Also, sorry, another quick tip, in your camera cut, you can't actually move your camera. You're just viewing the camera. But if you're in your cam shot 01, now you can move it. So let me just turn off auto key. Now I can move it. So be very mindful of that as well. Cool. So let me, cool. And then in this, you can also go from the perspective drop down, select cam shot 01. If it still doesn't change, it's because this isn't highlighted. Boom. Now that's gone. I'm going to turn off my grid. Cool. So I do have quite a few lights in here, but I'll show you what each of them are doing. So I just have a fill soft light. It's actually a bit too strong now, I would say. So if I just turn that down 0.04, the reason the values are so small is because I'm working with such a small object and I've stayed on candelas. I don't know what that means, but you can change it here if you want. I'm just used to using this unit of measurement. So I got a soft light. So it's quite thin, very low attenuation radius. This is very common in a lot of these shots, so definitely play with your attenuation radius when doing this sort of stuff. And then I kind of got a key light, which is a bit brighter, and then I use them in tandems to get a nice fall off, but still get a bit of a highlight towards the top of the phone. Next, I've got a rim left one. It's more of like a specular rim, and then a second one here to get a nice fall off on the left side. So that's these two guys right here, and you can see my cameras up here. So these are my two left rim lights, and then I got the same on the right side. So turn them off. That's my right corner of the phone. So really just trying to get that nice curvature of the frame. And a lot of these are ideas I got from references of the iPhone ads or like their images online on the Apple website. And then I just changed it a bit to my liking. And then, yeah, I got this rim too, which is a bit stronger, kind of showing the Apple logo as well. And then the really important specular highlight is this top on the frame here, which really gives that nice metallic engineered finish look and gives a few other highlights here. And if you want to look into more detail, you can just select your desired viewport and hit F11, and that'll maximize it. And then as long as you're in cinematic mode, you can now scrub through your animation in your full screen viewport. So that's another cool quick tip, and it shows you your camera settings as well, which is quite nice. And you can just minimize that or hit F11 again, and then I'll turn these on. So for the camera movement, all I did was angle a camera where I wanted to, where I liked it. So if I just go to unlit, just put a keyframe here, and then sort of moved up like this, stayed in, and set another keyframe at the end. And then what you can do is you can say, for example, it's at 150 and you feel like it's too fast, then you can just drag out this parent slider, because maybe you've animated other things, and then get a nice speed to what you like. Also, the green and red markers are your in and out point, so just be wary of those. The shortcut to set your in and out point is the square bracket. So left is for the in, left square bracket is for the in point, and the right square bracket is for the out point. And you can also use these buttons down here to do the same thing. The next thing I did in this scene was just animate the intensity of my light. So once you drag your light in, you can add a keyframe for the intensity. So just however you like it, position it where you want, as well as where your keyframes are and how slow you want them. So really it's just trial and error and then seeing what you like. Let's jump into another shot that I really enjoyed. So this first shot of the animation is something I really liked as well. You can see it's also very simple. So if I go into my split screen, pressing Shift C to go in and out of my camera cut, and then perspective shot 05. Cool. All I've got is I just have this light that I've brought in, also spawnable, and I've just animated it from left to right, as well as animated the intensity. So just the transform values as well as the light intensity values. Now, what I really like about this is the animation or the ramp of the aperture, or the focus distance, sorry. So if I open up my camera here, you'll see I have animated the focus distance. So that's something you can also look into doing. and then sort of just really moving around these keyframes until you've timed it correctly. And another thing, if you haven't done too much camera work before, you can click your camera here in the sequencer and it'll show up in the outliner all the settings, and you can get the focus plane to get an exact pinpoint area as well, or you can track an actor, which is essentially like a null object as well. So you can just go basic actor and position it, and then in your camera just go to track and then focus and then select a null. If you want to track a moving object or target, this is really useful for that. So yeah, really enjoyed this shot. Super simple setup, only 2 objects or 3 objects including the iPhone, and definitely play around with the cinematics and movement of things as well. The last shot I wanted to go over was shot 7, that also has a internal camera cut in it. This one was obviously a fun one to do, a lot more dynamic, and also has like a detailed close-up of the 2 phones coming together. This one is a good example of where I can show you the curve editor. I have mine open already, but if I close it, what you can do is hit this button here and it'll show everything that you've animated. And here is where you get all your curve options. So if I select this one, for example, you have auto tangents and a bunch of options here, linear, constant, blah, blah, blah. And if you want control, if I do this, it changes. Oh, okay, it's on by default. I've used cubic interpolation here, which gives me broken tangents, which means I have independent control of each side, like this. Or you can use auto, and that kind of keeps everything flat as a tangent. So definitely use the curve editor if you are wanting to really fine-tune your animations where it ramps up in speed and slows down in speed. Definitely quite simple to use as well in this iteration. You don't get independent values of where the actual handle is placed, but other than that, it's pretty simple to use. The lighting setup for this also very similar to the last one. So yeah, and just come out here. You can see I've just animated the phones. Oh, shot 7, cool. I've just animated the phone's transform values here. So just rotation and position, super simple. And then I've got where it starts, and then here is sort of the midpoint, and then the last position is just like a close-up position that I've given a lot of time for, so that it's like a very slow motion, which means it allows for this final cut to really have a bit more impact and gravity to it, and lets the viewer sort of focus on all the details. So definitely a fan of this shot. And in terms of lighting, I just fade in a few of the intensities. I have quite a few lights. I haven't named them in this one, but if I jump out and go into this camera, I don't know why it keeps doing that. There we go. You can see I've got like a big key light on the left here. I've used gradient fall offs that I've made in Photoshop to kind of give like a nice soft fall off to a few of the lights. For example, this top one here, this guy here has like a linear gradient on either side. Really simple to make. Just make like a JPEG gradient in Photoshop or wherever you've downloaded gobos from, drag it in, select your light, and then just import it into the source texture. So without it, you can see it's like really harsh and doesn't have like a soft fall off, and then with it, a lot nicer of a fall off. And this is really good, especially if you have like a lot of specular heavy objects like phones or glasses or tech products, things like that. Definitely utilize gobos and gradients for your lighting. So like I said, really I just animated the intensity, and then a few of them I've like animated the movement. So with this top rectilinear light, you can see I've just animated it moving up and down, and then all the others I've just faded in, really kind of just giving that strong rim lights towards the edges. And I really liked this kind of hot specular highlight on the left, maybe a bit too hot for my liking, so I could probably reduce the intensity of that guy, which is number 5. Oh, I haven't even keyframed him, which is good. So maybe something like that, like a 0.1 would work well. So yeah, that's kind of where I landed with this shot. Pretty happy with it, especially the close-up here. So definitely have a play around with moving the lights, using different camera cuts, you know, punching in and out, and also using the curve editor to get some nice like speed ramps and motion into your scene. So the last thing to go over is the master level sequence. Again, very simple. Right click, cinematics, level sequence. I usually call it LS for level sequence underscore master, and then whatever you want. You go in it, go to track, and first you need a camera cut track. Just leave that there, and then underneath that go to plus subsequences. So this is where you can now start adding in all your shots and timing them out. I'm just using control and scroll to give me more frames. You can also type them in here, the view, the working range end and the view range end. Right now you won't see anything, but if I go to the camera cut track and pilot it, or Shift C, now you can see that I've got my track in here. So maybe I'm happy with this length. I'm gonna zoom out. Let me add another one. SH02. Boom, boom. And maybe I want this to be shorter. Get another track. 03. You can have them all in one line. I just like having them over 2 different tracks just because it's easy to visualize. And now, once you're happy with it, if I go back to my actual master animation, you can see I've kind of timed everything here to my liking. And there we go. This was kind of what I finally ended up with. There was definitely some things I could improve with it for sure, especially that back material I think could be nicer because it's meant to be like a frosted glass, but overall pretty happy with it. I'm liking the camera movements and the animations that I've got going, and definitely a really fun project to work on. This was sort of like a throwaway shot I had, but I had all the different colored iPhones there because they had a cool reference, but I didn't end up using it. Thanks so much for watching. I'm keen on making some more videos. Hopefully you guys learned a few things, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.